4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome. Co-founder and president of ULD Care. Administrator Danielle Vio, I would like to welcome you to this first ULD Care virtual conference. The first ever ULD Care virtual conference. And continue to be so. COVID-19 has changed the way we The pandemic has also created unprecedented demand for all types of freight industry. Normally, we meet every year in person. Has been up to, and to learn about the latest developments in for an abbreviated conference and update over the next few hours on a number of issues, from the latest development in technology for ULD phase in trying to raise our profile. We expect from the next 12 to 24 months, so short-term kind of where our moderator, Carl, of this exciting new platform, Miansu. So without any further ado, Carl.
Is Carl Mavromichalis, and I'm delighted to be your moderator today. As you that we're on called Mindsu, and it's set up much like a and then a number of other rooms that that we will I'll take you through. To those of you in the Witness Protection Program, this conference is going to be recorded, and it may be available. If you'd like to ask a question, please look to the right of your screen, the upper right of your. This is the same for the sessions that we'll be holding in the main room, as well as if you have any technical issues and such, you can use the chat function, which so please type your question in the Q&A if you want the speakers to answer it. Icon. These questions will all be captured by ULD Care, and so chat is for general messages. Q&A queue, that's where we want the questions to go. Get answered. In addition to the Q&A button, you'll see along the upper right side of your window chat I covered already. I'll talk about the networking one in a minute. For the you can send them a direct chat message by clicking on their name. Anyone online at the moment has either if you see the button called join broadcast up, not everyone sees that, but click the join broadcast button for now. If someone top of your browser, you'll see 4 blue dots, one with a question mark, one with a calendar, and you have coming in red. So that's where you can then click on that and respond to speakers. As I mentioned, we have a number of rooms in this meeting. Right now, we're in the main conference room. A virtual reality training room. This room has a video playing in it that you can watch, but you will still be your audio from the main room, listening to the main room will go off, but you will still. Which I will announce, our friends at Airport College will be on hand to demonstrate their VR training live. Rooms you will find through the lobby or the main landing page where you arrive. For the track sessions at the appropriate time, so just a few minutes before the start time. To get into your browser window, then you'll land on that main event page where you can find the same layout and functionality as we have in here, so it should be familiar when you get there. We also presentations with no audio, so don't be alarmed. Presentations with no audio for we also have one exhibitor room, PalNet, that we encourage you to visit. I'd like to say a special thank you to sponsors that we have. This morning plenary that we're in right now. We have Trip & Co. sponsoring the morning panel discussion. And you'll see that their logos will be present in their track rooms. We have track 1, day. We have VRR, track 4, putting apps to work for ULD. Once again, for your generous support to our sponsors of the virtual conference. We'll be someone who you know of who's having trouble. You can support at converso.co. And some so that's the quick overview of MindSue. And of the day. We'd like to take some time to acknowledge the directors by a dedicated board of directors who volunteer their time. I'd like to acknowledge them by name. I'm sure everyone knows very well Urs Weisendanger. Technical Director, Cargo Equipment at Saffron Cabin. Jos Jacobsen, Global Leasing at ACL Airshop. Tarindu Senan, Joseph Jensen, Chief Technology Officer, Uniload Aviation Solutions. Cathay Pacific Airways. Chris Nodder, Senior Associate, Cargo Operations and Cultural. ULD, Operations and Delivery at Etihad Airways. Greg Feeney, Director, ULD. VP Global Logistics Service Provider Sales at Descartes. Frode Eriksson, Abdullah Al Mumayyiz, ULD Manager, Qatar Airways. Jeff Edwards, General Manager, Cargo Network Control, Air Canada. Raukins, formerly with KLM Cargo, now an independent director. So thank you very much. The cause with ULD Care. Now moving on to our keynote. Of ULD Care will take us through the organization's achievements in the last couple of years. The coming months. Before I hand things over to Bob, just a really quick thank you again to our morning sponsor, ACL Airshop, your information. And now, Bob, over to you.
Or in my case, good night, because it's a little after midnight here in Hong Kong. That will help. Okay. Okay. Again, good morning, good afternoon. To be able to talk about what's going on in the big world of ULD. We'll explain a little bit what we've been doing and what we like to do. So I'm now. We will, and I hope now everybody can see. Is focused on the future. We felt over a year ago, with COVID raging around the world, had to be focused on where things were going to go when things eventually got better. Iata, and it's basically the air cargo tonnage. And as you can, of course, had this incredible collapse in early 2020. It's almost exactly 20. And gloom. Air travel was decimated, but and so on. However, by some kind of a miracle, because everybody was instead turned to their keyboards and logged into Amazon.com and the other platforms. Last 18 months or so experienced an unprecedented recovery. Of us could have forecast 24 months ago. I think we've been incredibly fortunate with other components of the airline industry, such as galley equipment or bullet, and it's been remarkable. Of course, we've seen a few of our colleagues disappear. But on the whole, considering the state of affairs in the airline industry, we've actually been How has been the ULD Care COVID-19 journey? Is that a face-to-face conference just wasn't going to happen, but that didn't mean we for the IULD-UG platform, of which more I'll talk about later, and we'd and also during 2020 we started looking into using virtual reality. So as we staggered towards the end of 2020 with COVID still raging and moved into based IULD-UG system with expanded capabilities. We did this in conjunction with CETA. We carried out an in-depth study into the absence of demurrage charging for off-airport is very much part of track one. And we launched 2 virtual reality ULD area, and I think shows a lot of opportunity, a lot of potential for delivering low cost. So what's our vision for the future? Well, at the top of the line is system. I think we all know that when it comes to ULD, it falls far, far, far down the any real responsibility. And to achieve this, we need to take back for the air cargo environment. We need to introduce some new technologies. It's not just a box to be pushed around by a forklift, but that it has to be treated. During last year, we held the ULD Care annual and pleased to say we got a number of new faces on the board, particularly from the a roadmap and a plan for the future. I'm not going to go through this in great detail. Motivations for getting things done. Of course, we recognize that all our to demand too much of their attention. Urs and myself are in the fortunate position of being somewhat limited, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be ambitious. And we believe that this plan will going to take you through the 6 initiatives that we're working on. And the first one here is taking back airport operations are a major risk for ULD. We all know about unreported damage. The equipment, the ULDs get damaged off airport and they just simply, which I put in inverted commas because it might be called another name, but anyway. And to try and quantify this, we have roughly from industry numbers, ULD inventory is off the radar and potentially overdue for return at if you imagine trying to run any business where 5 to 10% of your productive 5 to 10% of your staff don't show up, or 5% to 10% of your vehicles are not available. You simply couldn't run a business effectively. It would just destroy any kind of industry. They have a 100% demurrage enforcement policy. Leaves the port terminal gate and goes out. The clock is ticking until industry with ULD close to 0%. There's something very strange here. The Iata Air Cargo Tariff Manual, which is a considerable is the go-to document that the entire air cargo industry uses to more pages of closely packed text that tells a lot of it is commercial, but not all of it, because tucked away in section 4, wow. And here's the funny story. I've been in this business a long time, and I only them have never seen this, even though they've been in this industry a long time. And you can see here to the next slide, because I've picked out the top 3 paragraphs, which I'm going to improved handling efficiencies. In the normal course of events, ULDs move relatively seamlessly or misuse of ULD, or these would typically vary from one airline to another. And in all the years I've been around, I have no very, very limited So demurrage charges may be levied, subject to provisions in applicable tariffs The charge is designed to encourage prompt return of ULDs rather than generate revenue. Fair enough. Of equipment just being parked in the freight forwarder's shed until he can be bothered to. ULD represents a significant capital investment as well as considerable repair costs. A loss lost or damaged beyond economical repair, a ULD owner might claim a replacement cost. To return a ULD to serviceable condition might also be claimed. Of course it would be. The procedures are already there. These are Iata standards. But for whatever reason, this has been ignored. And this is what I'd like to talk. Freight industries have demurrage policies. That's a tick. The Iata tax. Iata is the association of the Freight Forwarders Association, both for air. Details, but it's loud and clear in black and white. And through implementing the ULD they use, because if they're going to get a bill for returning it late, it's not a big step. We can learn more about this whole subject if you join track 1. Industry-wide KPIs. Well, the saying is, if you can't manage it. How does any airline really know how well they are really doing? If they're in short-term knee-jerk reactions to a crisis rather than aftermath of COVID and the recent logistics chain crises. On problems in ocean shipping, but the problems are just as significant in air. The operations grow, but on the other hand, and we've seen this all too often, we see fewer and fewer airlines really give sufficient attention to the to have. It just comes down to crisis management. So the solution here is we anonymize and then distribute industry data on a number of KPIs. And we've had a group that ULD losses. That's always a hot button topic. ULD utilization. Or in a month. ULD total cost of ownership costs. That's a cargo strap consumption, one of my pet subjects, and I'll touch on that more later. Straps because they don't have any standard to measure themselves against, and number of productive URDs do you have for every space on the aircraft that is actually earning you money? To try and develop a good set of information. Today. So the track on this subject, track 2, will not be running, but URD Care's communication and social media presence. A very fertile ground for URD Care. And although we set up the websites are now ho-hum, and newsletters also. Newsletter. So we need to rebuild and refocus our communication. Who we've been with for many years, and we are now launching ourselves into a more sophisticated have to sorry, not WhatsApp, LinkedIn. I have to confess here that I'm this subject, but I think we're in the hands of some good experts. And if you want to okay, apps. Which one of us hasn't got screen sitting on the top of a mountain or in the middle of a field? Which one of us doesn't want mobile phone? Apps are synonymous with everyday life, and we all want to conduct business. The events go on inside an office. The short answer is there aren't any. And if we're going to collect accurate, real-time control system or data management system, apps are the way forward. Feedback on it, and we already have some apps in development, and I'm plans in the coming years. So you can learn more about that on track number 4. What a challenge, what a challenge. I'd have to say that you already know how is COVID. Even before COVID, it was a problem. Turnover in the it's a pretty awful job, and nothing has really changed in and this guy pushing the pallet in the picture, he could just as easily have been doing that in the 1970s. Careful. There's an enormously high staff turnover. There's the airlines got a lot of direct financial assistance from governments, the ground handling industries. Now have a high demand for cargo, so there's a lot of tonnage moving through the terminals, and a lot of you in the past few years or a couple of years. Probably, certainly not enough, and probably. And the question that I think we have to look at is, how can we deliver widespread our industry? And I know how challenged this is. I've been an Iata URD trainings, typically 5 days, and they're great fun because you sit with a group of people. And this is the challenge. So we have to find a way to, and we have to find ways to finance this. We have to find ways to motivate the and we have to make the best use of the technologies that we have. And in the networking room, and I encourage you to do so. I mean, you can't go a day without reading something about sustainability. It's absolutely. When I started in URD back in the 1980s, a typical LD3 came in at about 130 kilograms. Come a long way, certainly in weight reduction, which of course is the biggest factor of all. Not so damaging for the equipment. But the average cargo terminal or freight shed, you'll see particularly damaged sorts of waste involved in the whole process of URDs being damaged and repaired and damaged. This one really winds me up. Cargo straps. That comes in at about 2,100 tons of steel. Will have generated roughly 4,000 tons of CO2 in their production. Those straps. So how many of these straps get to be used for their total design? Get used a couple of times and then somehow go off-piste and end up in a landfill. And this is just appalling that this goes on. Anyway, that's my pet. Sustainability, please learn more about that by spending time at track 6. So, no question. You can read about it in the news all the time. Technology is moving as far as technology. Suddenly, we've got a surplus of technology. And air cargo is on the other hand, these are demanding times. We have tight budgets. I mean, long established and entrenched bad practices. They're tribal knowledge. urgent overriding the important. And if that means ULDs get damaged as collateral, strive for the perfect and allow it to become the enemy of the perfectly good. We want to take back control through our demurrage program. And as I say, we've come a long we need to establish these industry KPIs. They're important. Profile for ULD. We need to get their image up through using social media. We need to support low-cost, effective ULD knowledge. ULD Care has ULD trainings, inspecting a container and inspecting a pallet and net, and we're very pleased. And sustainability issue. Just a couple of days ago, Iata, the Freight Forwarders Association, the profile of sustainability in the air cargo forwarding industry. And with that, thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed this keynote, and over to Carl. Thank you, Carl.
Thank you very much, Bob. Been a while since we've heard the update from ULD Care, so hopefully everyone short-term future is going to look like. Next, we're going to have to remind everyone that there are rooms in the area, which is where you arrived. So those will be going on all day. So if you have 2 live in-person virtual reality training sessions starting in the next 30 minutes. Simply click join the meeting room, and then that's where you will see that. Trip & Co. Please visit www.trip-co.nl for more information. And I'm wondering if we can have the following people. And Jos Jacobsen. I'll just there's Jos, and so we're just waiting for Ulf. Just give us one moment.
Okay.
There we go. Okay.
The wrong mouse.
Got a lot of options. Okay, we're pleased to have with us cargo equipment for Safran Cabin, and Jos Jacobsen, COO Eastern Hemisphere. Gentlemen, to be part of the panel. I'd like to get things moving with a question for the central theme of the ULD Care Conference is for us to step outside of the day-to-day pressures of ULD Care's resources at this time. Why don't I start with you, Ulf, and then Jos?
Potential targets for the future. Bob has quickly run through the roadmap which we designed, which of the core business, the system. But I think since ULD Care started with a box, and one of the key elements for me is developing these tiny people much easier, and by that most probably also more safe. And see no problems, but it's when we look at time, the majority of the people very limited time available to really push that forward. So it might take as it would be if you just buy it from a shop or whatever. But we are a little longer. And the other problem is money. This is the other main resource. And we have limited money available. Yeah, we cannot just throw out millions. Topics which we are working on right now, and other ones are, let's call it ideas. Yeah. And one last comment on that one. From the front line, from the people actually touching ULDs, pushing them around, loading them. Ideas, yeah, we cannot start with any new project, whatever, because those people
Thanks, Ulf. Jos, over to you.
Basically, you mentioned a lot already. So, in my opinion, it's definitely the face of this knowledge within ULD Care for a long, long time, and I think it's a variety of people there, and it's definitely the people who control many important asset. We're a networking community as well, so we share knowledge. We're at the bottom of the barrel at all times. Whatever you do, don't touch ULD because it's the most important thing in the actual cargo aircraft, because without that, there's no cargo being flown. And share resources, create additional tools, like Ulf said as well. Parties like Tiaka or Iata, we're a little bit different. We're more informal, and the small piece of this industry, which is the ULD, which doesn't attract a lot of attention, is now brought to the entered this business. ULD wasn't really interesting, and now 20 years later, I think ULD Care is definitely ahead of the curve by adding all these tools, creating some efficiency gains on our end. So I really believe that the ULD Care knowledge bases out there, and I foresee a good future for
Am I on? Yeah. Okay. Over to you, Bob.
Thank you, Carl, and yeah, thank you. I'm not very good at choosing between different priorities, so I tend to sort of and that, of course, is a challenge. I'm fortunate that I no longer have a day job. Colleagues in the ULD Care aren't necessarily in that situation. I'm also and make sure that we spend it wisely, as Joss, I think, said, or was it? No. I'm pleased to say that we have managed during the during COVID, and I lost a couple along the way, but quite honestly, that's to be expected. Reasonably strong financial position to be able, and I like to discuss position to incubate new ideas. They may not always work out, particularly when we have to try. If we don't try, we're letting the industry down, and so that between any of the 6 tracks that I've just covered, because they're all which is what ULD Care is all about. If I really control, which will involve through demurrage, will initiatives that we've done over the years, because actually, if the airlines start to it actually is about getting the equipment back, but either way, the airlines will direct training or safety or whatever, or infrastructure. We're offering them the opportunity. I think that one's probably perhaps can be at least in the lead. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. I just wanted to clarify something. I made an it'll be starting in 5 minutes. We're a little bit ahead of schedule, so in 5 minutes time. To the panel, and then maybe we can go to Jeremy's question. Against the backdrop demand for air cargo, it highlighted some strengths and weaknesses of ULD operations. Demonstrated themselves through the significant uptick in demand. Also came to light, and what could ULD Care do about those in particular?
If you want,
Yeah.
Sure.
that's okay. So as maybe because on my end, manage fleet for airlines as well, and we are a manufacturer, so we actually touch a lot of January, February, March hit in 2020. Then we didn't see what was coming really. And then suddenly it hit, and I think first talking about the strength of the quick by finding any type of solution for moving vaccines, PPE. I think that has proven that the airline industry really can manage through a crisis situation. Other forms of transport, it's so quick and extremely efficient, even though people think, well, compared to all the other types of transport. If you put it on a boat, and everybody knows that, it takes weeks. Doesn't arrive in time. It's maybe only 30 minutes late, or an hour late, or 2 hours late, but no service is the capability to adapt to new situations, and we as business and everybody can assist in their own way. We manage so that everything was picked up and moved from one location to the other. So.
Because what Joost mentioned, that the reaction of the airlines was really airlines, more or less via the back door, is that airlines also. I was really surprised that also the authorities reacted quite where everybody always thought authorities very bureaucratic, that will take ages. And a different story, but also that really worked fine. But some gaps. Airlines try to react on the new situation quickly. Needs, but what we have seen is a totally unexpected It was a fair ratio between standard, common lower deck containers, main deck. On the history, on the data, to get raw materials on stock. And because now we see main deck containers, hardly any lower deck, and pallets. Material on stock to cover all that demand. And then with COVID on top and the current availability, sometimes material was simply not available at all. Yeah. And here, sometimes we got in a situation where airlines wanted to move provided to the airlines. Yeah. So there, I hope that they also understand if they are not able to inform the manufacturers upfront, which was not possible here, and what the on the material supply chain level, it's still dramatic. If it's delivered at all. Yeah. So that's my part on that.
Already answered that.
It's
good.
still, just look at the news.
Yeah.
Trying to get where a lot of raw aluminum sheets from pellets are coming from. So.
Right. Bob, did you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. That Ulf and Goss have raised. I think to cope with crisis and manage to dig themselves out. There is a downside to that, is that there is also a crisis to crisis and not spend enough time focusing on the key issues. And best if we can be focused on the important rather than the urgent. Be submerged in the daily hurly-burly of getting and I think we're quite well placed to be able to do that at the moment. If we can keep our finances in good shape, then I think you amount of challenge in the cargo industry, both in maritime. In a way, this has actually raised the profile of this equipment up. We are going to suffer, and I think I particularly technology. I mean, if we look at the way a lot of ULD functions, how the telephones looked in 1970s with the rotary dial. Well, we're still really why is this being allowed to continue on? And as I say, you know, there are so many to bring in the changes, and I do think that ULD Care can do this. And
Okay, great responses. Thank you. I do have thoughts that they'd like the panel to comment on. Please use the Q&A queue to do that. We have Jeremy. Building off further on that technology side of things that you just mentioned, Bob. Contained systems are introduced, it will be far easier to reduce missing containers. So anyone want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, I think there are plenty of new developments existing. From the 70s to now, in between, there were a lot of initiatives also on tracking. Like the problem was that at that time, every airline was dealing with their own IT infrastructure. And more or less a lot of different technologies can fit into whatever infrastructure. Also here on the ULD tracking, if we look how many companies now have developed the pooling companies, airlines, and it seems to work. Whatever. So I think there is a wider acceptance into airlines system nowadays. On that one.
Bob, did you want to
yes,
comment on that as well?
absolutely. The word is a technophobe, but I certainly do get excited.
You're pretty
about
savvy,
you.
Bob. You're pretty.
And having sat through endless mind-numbing hours of RFID nowhere. And here's the strange thing. RFID, I discovered recently, is point. It may actually be quite applicable to ULD once again. I think there's two issues. Digitalization can improve the location of container. There's two. It's very nice on a Google map or wherever. And one is who's responsible for it. Location doesn't necessarily cover the technology need. I think, as also, there will be multiple technologies coming into the game. They're not that difficult, and they are not that. Getting the financial justification to put a tag on every really fall to extremely low prices. So and also develop a challenge in providing charge demurrage for late return of equipment, because then there's a direct financial if we can support that and make that easy through the maritime industry. You know, some people believe that the reason they can charge demurrage that's 20 million rather than ULD 1 million. All those 20 million shipping from maybe some refrigerated equipment may have, but the rest of them, they don't have. Called an EIR, I think, an equipment interchange receipt or something, which looks strangely bend technology to make it easier for the two signatures from the transferring carrier and the receiving carrier. We are video playing in one of the rooms. Carl, maybe you can help me out here, which I would invite. The use of RFID, which is particularly interesting because it is coming back. If there's a monetary positive for the relatively small amounts of money to have their equipment easily traced and tracked.
Jos, and talk about it maybe from the perspective of for your customers.
Yeah.
Help us understand what that looks like in practice. Over to you, Jos.
Yeah. So thanks. Yeah, and all the question from Jeremy. There are many developments, obviously, but like Bob said, 50,000 ULDs with Bluetooth, is it really worth it? And that's for us the same thing. Because is the technology good enough? Does it locate your pallet? Is it on it or not? And we as a company, we were a couple of years ago, and they're still providing us with the Bluetooth technology. We are now tagging ID because we feel that the Bluetooth technology is actually pretty cost effective. It has a low tracking ULDs. Is there a network available? And if there's no network, there's no team. And if it becomes mainstream, then suddenly the ULD is interesting as well, because mainstream It's no aircraft. It's just the ULD, which has a low cost. So everything on top of it needs. There's a change in business going on in the airline industry. Airlines are becoming integrators, basically. Of course, are always the integrators, but airlines themselves are becoming their own integrators. So they. And I foresee a change coming very soon. Now the technology is still Bluetooth. Depends on battery and cost, obviously, or any other low technology. I think also proven now what you have with the AirTag from Apple. Connecting your watch to your bicycle, but you're connecting your ULD to your cargo, to your aircraft, to the customer. Well, I don't want to say 1 year, but in the next 1 to 5 years, a big change in. Will be the ones like horse boxes for Jeremy then, because then you can pay a little bit more. With an aircraft engine on there, and I do know that there's a lot of tracking being done on the car. To invest in this technology next to the software, so this means complete visibility.
Before I go back to Bob, Ulf, does your no secrets, of course, don't ask. As part of the manufacturing process, like is that in the cards at all, or is this going to be something that
or preconditions set by the airlines with their IT systems to which we have no access? Whatever our customer airline wants to have, we're going to provide them. Ideal solution. We did already some kind of tailor-made machining to just a manufacturer. We are too far away, at least currently with the existing technology, to come to develop something and tell the airline, here is a great system. Remember, I think that was in Prague, where also from Safran, people were there presenting some. This, that slogan everybody had heard so many times, smart ULD, with applications for that one, but nobody has really come up with a clear definition. What should such a we are not in a position to develop something, throw it to the airline, say, here it is, use it. The airline.
see, do you have more visibility then, because you guys manufacture it, but then you also to understanding what the airlines require when it comes to tracking and how need to be adjusted or different, or do your systems need to be able to clock into theirs? I think airlines are known for legacy systems of various kinds,
Yeah.
right? So how do you take something that's brand new, sort of
So for Ulf, and I understand that when you're a manufacturer, you won't on next today's knowledge is tomorrow's history, right? So regulations we need to conform to, because there's a safety issue there as well. We just continue to develop on the hardware side and on the software side. And you're right, there are many legacy systems, even sometimes archaic systems. And suddenly, it's a fashion word. You want to start it, what type of coffee you want, right? By connecting it to something else, or when the lights need to be turned on. Paper, just writing down the numbers, and just visual inspections. Artificial intelligence, all these kind of things, and the combination of that, I think ULD, the end customer, is not being served. So that's what we're trying to achieve here. We're helping ourselves by adding all these smart tools.
airline by airline basis being able to track the movement of ULDs? What on blockchain? Maybe help us understand how those pieces fit together.
Okay. I'm going to leap into a big dissertation on blockchain, but I am going to pick you up on what you said. It's all these new technologies are fantastic, but if there isn't someone into the airline system in a way that sort of is done automatically, again, I think ULD Care is a big part of the solution, because never let it be forgotten. Our ULD UG system, which is, as we speak at this very moment, is processing through. It's out of date, but it still functions. It still runs perfectly well, and we APIs, which enables the transfer of information between systems incredibly. Neutral platform provider, we can facilitate all these when I started looking at blockchain 3 or 4 years ago, it was all about Bitcoin, and it hardly had blockchain applications that didn't involve crypto. Now blockchain has a widespread it is a very high candidate that everybody would need to use it. It's got the trust and the capability. To confess, my knowledge of blockchain gets stretched quite repeatedly, but the other thing I would mention, which is a big stumbling block and that the industry needs to develop if we're going to applications, the reality is that the Iata standard for marking a pallet is pallet. Once it's been around the tracks a few times, the markings are not in great. We have to start looking hard at digitizing the markings of letters, but when it comes to pallets, it's really in the dark ages, and the first of all, they're reading it off, you know, with the Mark I eyesight. Is already a bad move, and that's even when the marking's in good condition. What happens if it's been three areas that need to be addressed, but I think we can address them.
Yeah. I mean, they are nicely engraved, or we see more and more airlines who are it's even barcodes / QR codes, but to read that
Yeah, it has to be. We really have to get needs to move into the 22nd century quickly.
There's a lot of variables still at play, but evolution and evolution and the ULDs as they're being transferred around. Switching gears a little bit towards our sustainability is the key to the future of air cargo. How can ULD Care contribute? Why don't we go to Jos on this one first, and then to Bob, and then Ulf.
Yeah. Too much, then I don't need to do the track anymore. Yeah, I think matter experts. We need to show the value of the ULD in the sustainability. 20 years ago, the first thing I learned is that everybody's looking for lighter ULDs, but then the fuel price out there, fuel prices are rising again. So it's very interesting still for an airline on a cost saving. And all the manufacturers like Ulf, Safran, they can definitely offer it doesn't add anything to cost savings. We need to put the ULD. A ULD is an integral part of the aircraft, so and it should be treated as such. Itself on sustainable aviation fuel, but the ULD plays an important part. technology, for instance, the whole process of getting the ULDs to the aircraft or having enough then it sounds like it's a little bit sales pitchy, but it's the truth, right? If you don't have its sustainability efforts are nowhere when you start moving empty stuff around. Make sure digitalization aspect in the ULDs will create a more efficient supply chain. Make sure that you have the tools available, like you can see in the tracks later on. When a that's a huge cost saving, and that's also a great sustainability effort in the end. If you change your warehouse into more the ULD itself, everything is connected to the airline, and it starts with the ULD itself. And
Over to you, Bob.
Okay, thank you, Joss. I split sustainability into two categories. There's the one like in order to pay for the solar panels. Fortunately, the government has a very, very I still had to put my hand in my pocket to do this. But sorry, the other side of the equation, and this is where it really winds me up a bit, which is around air cargo operations, and that includes ULD operations. And I already the number of nets being driven over by forklifts and then thrown in a rubbish bin, the number of spreader boards. There is so much waste, and this waste, you don't have to spend money to and apply a bit of intelligent thinking to the process. After 2 trips, that doesn't require any investment. In fact, it'll save money because on reduction in waste as a subset of sustainability. Is working on recyclable pallet sheet, which is another huge big issue is waste. And I hope we can trigger some serious things.
Manufacturer perspective is how is sustainability?
It's more and we can turn around wherever we are going to. We are struggling on that. I would like to focus really on where Bob was also pointing towards. For me, sustainability is wasted. Yeah. And when we look at ULDs, also what Jos mentioned and Bob, 100 kilos. We are now somewhere as an average high 50 kilos. I think we as manufacturer have already saved tremendously approach. Low weight ULDs will save fuel consumption when it's filled up to the max takeoff weight. Yeah. So whatever we save on a ULD creates more revenue, but it's not really saving CO2. The aircraft will still be loaded to than what they are talking. But for us on the ULD, I think the way coming up with a tool or a platform, what yours platform run by ULD, where airlines and manufacturers and material find the best way to deal with ULDs, which are non-serviceable out of their lifetime. And made from containers, pallets, majority is aluminum, wonderful to not a lot, but you have different composite panel materials. We know from other discussions material seem to have interest to get that material back just for other but I think there's also a good way to recycle that. And then we have the straps and nets, webbing. And to me, the problem is that each airline so far contract or whatever solution is, or they just ignore it because it's too complicated. Contract to some specialists in recycling for the various products and to transport damaged ULDs, scrap part. You don't have to transport them in fully. Do it, put an LT3 container under a high loader and let it run down. And you got a nice flat big spots around the globe where people can throw in more or less their they got so and so money back. So it could even create revenue for the airlines, for and that's most probably also what yours in his track 6 is then also great opportunities for us as ULD Care to support that. Yep.
You touched on your presentation about being able to measure this. How any sustainability efforts would be a good idea for the industry to tackle?
There was a big press release this week from Iata, who is launching a major and I've already approached him. I haven't heard back from him yet, but I've said that I haven't read it through in detail yet, but they appear to have done a great deal of work. Don't measure how much waste you've got if you don't measure how much potential you've got here. A high degree of inspiration out of some of the work that they've done. Such a huge sore point. Yeah, some of it is more to turn this into rocket science. I think we can pick some fairly significant low. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yep, that's great. Thanks. Of our time for the panel discussion. Thanks, Ulf Hartman. Answering the questions. Up next is our first break, which will be followed by the track set. Rooms. The way that you get there, again, is by clicking the lobby button or leave, whichever. We'll be aligning the use of demurrage in ULD operations with other modes of transport, such as Frank Mullenkamp from Jettainer was not able to attend today. So track 2. Strategy. And again, go to the leave or lobby button up at the top. Those are concurrent tracks, 1 and 3. So you'll have to pick one of 5 and 6 that are followed immediately after the first to work for ULD. Track 5 will be about coaching and training. You get there by clicking the leave or lobby button at the top right of your session in about 2 hours. We also have a couple in the lobby if you have a moment between the networking breaks. So we're starting with the track session. The following, the 1 and 3 will be starting at the top of the hour, and then in about an hour's time from there. And then at, I just want to give you there will be another session of virtual reality training. At 3:45 Eastern, 19:45 GMT for the and hope to see you all at that point.